Tenekoto Katoa. Welcome back to the Youth Factor, where we aim to see the world through the lens of the future. I'm your host, Alex Jung, and I hope to take you on a virtual journey around the world, where stories untold will be shared, current issues will be discussed, and the voices of the youth will be heard. Today, we explore a Baltic state. This country is known for its amazing nature, including lakes, forests, and islands. It is one of the highest densities of large wildlife in Europe, some of the cleanest air in the world, and consistently ranks in the top 5 nations in terms of sustainable tourism. The state is also known for having the best public education system in Europe, showing their advanced social structures. Remarkably, this state is the world's leading startup nation and has the most advanced digital society in the world, showing their successful development in many key sectors. Today, we explore Estonia. And joining me today is our guest host, Markus Luik. Markus is a graduate from UWC Costa Rica and is from the capital of Estonia, Tallinn. He has a passion for creative fields, but also finds interest in philosophy, anthropology, and neuroscience. Welcome, Markus, to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much.
So, could
So
you please
I'm
introduce
Marcus.
yourself? Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
I'm Marcus. I'm 19. As you said, graduated from UWC Costa Rica, and currently I'm back home in Tallinn preparing for uni.
Mhm.
Um, my hobbies, I don't know, it's hard to state my hobbies. I mean, philosophy, anthropology, neuroscience, those are big hobbies, but currently I think I'm very much into like game design, storytelling, writing. And yeah. And in terms of where I come from, I grew up in Tallinn. I've lived here my whole life. Tallinn is the capital, um, and it's also where like 1/3 of Estonians live. So I might have a bit of bias on that in terms of my views, but I think it's still relevant. And yeah, thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this conversation. You said you're interested in philosophy and neuroscience. Seems like very different things, but it shows you've got a lot of curiosity, and I think that's great. I'm very honored to have you on here, and let's just dive right into our first topic then. So the first topic I want to discuss is about the positive developments in Estonia, because like I introduced, there are so many great things about this state. It holds the largest digital society in the world. Of course, this is kind of part of this $2 trillion EU Green Deal, which is in place to digitalize and decarbonize. And it specifically aims to close this digital divide between the East, where Estonia is Eastern Europe, and the West part of it. And it makes sense that this sort of development is going to happen in some form. But what do you think has made Estonia as a state in particular stand out as a leading digital economy? And what are some key successful investments or achievements, would you say?
I think it's interesting because I've grown up after most of these investments have been done.
Hmm.
So most of the Estonian kind of digitalization investments and building Estonia up really from the Soviet Union, that took place, late 90s and early 2000s. I was born in 2004, so I missed quite a few of them. Um, but I think for us that's the key is that it's you have to like lay down the groundwork and keep working on it. I think I was thinking about how to kind of bring an analogy, and I thought, well, everyone says like Japan has great trains. They have great trains, that's sure, but they work to like build that up. So we have a great digital economy, but that took like years to build. So early 2000s, as I said, we started, e-taxes, and then after that came secure data sharing, and then came e-voting. So it like step by step, year by year. Um, that's one thing. And then also, I don't know, how do we do this for so long? That I've also thought of, but what I've realized is that most of these kind of digital um, revelations or digital kind of achievements aren't haven't been stuck behind like elections,
Mm,
because often I see, oh, some sort of road or some sort of big plan is stuck behind some candidate being like, I want to do this. Most of the stuff here, especially like recent developments, I don't even know of them. They're not really advertised,
mm,
but they're slowly being built in the background, making like, I don't know, lives here just easier. Like I don't think about the secure data sharing platform that we have, but then I look it up and then I'm like, oh wow, we use like blockchain to like share data. That's
mm,
pretty cool. But why didn't I know about that? Well, I don't really need to know about that.
mm,
Um, but my life's so much easier. I mean, like but also easier in a way where again, I don't think about that. It's like I
Mm.
do because now I'm an adult, I do taxes, but it feels like it should be so easy, you know? It feels like I should just be able to log in and do it. So yeah, I think those are the like kind of how we do it. So we've just spent a bunch of time on it. And then it makes everyone's life easier.
Mm.
But also, I mean, why did we decide on this? And how are we okay with it? I think it's because Estonians are partially, we're used to change. We became, an independent nation, then we got taken over by um, the Russian Tsar, and then we became free again, and then we got taken over by the Soviet Union, and then we became free again. So we keep like kind of juggling and changing, and we're like digitalization, just another new thing, right?
Right.
Um, we're a very small country.
Mm.
We're in the east, near to Russia. We're not like big like Germany. We're not like the US. We don't have like a big cultural impact in the world. So in a way, if we don't, or if we hadn't found a niche for ourselves like a digital economy, I don't think we would have been taken as seriously because
Mm.
now we even have like the NATO's like digital defense sector is in Estonia, which I was like, okay, wow, we have so much legitimacy, and
Mm.
that's also because we chose this niche, and then we kept educating new Estonian IT people, and we've kind of very much made it a prominent role to be in is to study IT and do IT stuff.
Mm.
So yeah, I think those are the main achievements and how we kind of come to them. But again, I've grown up not knowing most of this,
Mm.
so I think it would be very different to be someone like my mom or dad and see all of this happening, especially because most of the kind of 40-year-old generation, they grew up in the Soviet Union.
Mm.
So they came out of the Soviet Union and then, you know, had to build Estonia up from that. Anyways.
Yeah. It's interesting to kind of see it's almost like a selling point for the nation. Like you said, it provides some form of legitimacy. And I mean, you mentioned e-taxes and e-voting, which by the way, not many countries in the world are doing systematically. So it's
Yeah, yeah.
remarkable, isn't it? You know, just factually, I was just doing my research beforehand, and 96% of income tax declarations are submitted online in Estonia. We have almost 100,000 people between the ages of 55 to 75, voting online, which is showing how even the elderly, which we often kind of stereotypically kind of say are the ones left behind in this digitalization and all that, and they're adjusting to these changes. And I think that's really remarkable. So what do you think other methodology, whether it's by governments or groups or whatnot, to reduce this kind of disparity and open up accessibility regarding digital services so no one's really left behind? For example, what has enabled such high rates of online voters from the elderly, not just, the youth or,
Hmm.
younger voters? Yeah.
I think I don't know if there are that many government programs per se. There are government programs for elderly people, that's true, and there are like programs to get them more connected. But I find that I mean, first off, online voting is just so easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's you have your ID card and then you like log in and then you choose your candidate and then you press vote.
Mm.
So it's pretty, it's in that way pretty easy. Um, Second off, I think also Estonia is a bit more collectivist. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so if you're in a family and you have grandparents, I feel you're more likely to help them, especially if they've played a role in your life, which if, after the Soviet Union and during the Soviet Union, your families had to stick together. Otherwise, it's just harder to live. And I think we've supported elderly people more. Like for my family, we me and my grandparents are very much in contact. And if they need anything technologically, I help them. But of course, that's not with every family. But I just feel in general, we're less. disconnected from our elders.
Mm.
Um, and then if there are people who are not, then there are either, regional services by like, especially in rural areas, there are like um, community, how do you call them? Community people, community managers,
I guess
who
so.
like
Public servants type people.
public servants. Yeah, exactly. Who help get those people who aren't as connected as well.
Mm.
But yeah, so it's easy, and I think we were more willing to help in that regard.
Mm. I want to just follow up on a question regarding because you mentioned the Soviet Union quite a number of times now as kind of a
Hmm.
quite a big influence on Estonia. Can you probably elaborate a little bit more on that? Like, do you see any remnants of Soviet, rule? Like you talked about collectivist mindset, which is kind of part of that Soviet ideology as
Yeah.
well. Or yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because the older I get, the more I kind of see the impacts of it. I
Mm,
mean, there's population just because of the Soviet Union, our population is a certain way. So during the Soviet Union, they moved a bunch of Estonians, often also forcefully, out of Estonia into Russia and brought Russians in an attempt to kind of dilute culture
mm,
and make it for more favorable for the Russian Soviet Union. How has it impacted culture? I think with the questions we're also going to get there slowly, because I've seen that some we haven't completely like erased every socialist value. Like we
right.
have we we've taken like some parts that are like, oh, like maybe we should have a welfare system or a healthcare system,
Mm,
and maybe we should have like taxes. Like our taxes are fairly high,
mm,
um, but also most people are fine with that because of all the kind of welfare they get.
mm. Fair enough, yeah.
Yeah.
So now we're going to go back to the topic. I asked that just because
Hmm.
it's good to provide that kind of historical context to it. And yeah, I don't think many people know about that kind of relationship between Soviet Union and Estonia and how that, kind of plays out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So kind of going back to that conversation about, digitalization and the rate of development, do you think there are any potential problems or issues or maybe more so challenges that need to be overcome to make this system even better? What are some next goals, perhaps? What do you think?
What's the next goals is interesting. I think we just have to centralize everything a lot more.
Mm,
Currently, there's already an Estonia.ee website, which you can see all your things, but we could go even further, like they're developing an app and doing even more things online. But that just, centralizes everything and makes it more streamlined because otherwise you have to vote with one website and then pay taxes with another website and then do a third thing with a third website, and that becomes more messy.
mm,
So I think now that we have all these services, we can centralize them, and they're working towards that as well. And really, I think it's to keep everything going as well.
mm,
I when doing research, I found out that there was a cyber attack on Estonia in like 2007,
mhm,
which if you base everything on, digital files and digital information,
mm.
that is, easier to take digitally.
Right.
So really like keeping up with cybersecurity, I think is very important
Mm,
because there's constantly new threats, there's constantly new
yeah.
ways of dealing with it, software upgrades, hardware upgrades. And with hardware as well, another thing is, yes, it's based on the cloud, but the cloud is based on a physical thing. Like you need servers, you need computers. And during, for example, the pandemic chip shortage,
Mm,
I don't think it really affected Estonia. But if there would be, either some supply shortage or some, conflict that stopped a income of hardware and supply, like computer chips,
mhm,
that could put a dent in either progress or just overall security because our hardware can fail and there's new hardware. So I think that's an interesting thing that we don't talk about really. I haven't heard Estonians talk about chip shortages and yeah, and then of course power.
Mm,
Because computers and servers need electricity. So where do we get the power? If there's a blackout, what might happen? And also how to keep rural communities connected because oftentimes rural power lines aren't weather protected. So during storms or during heavy snowfall, the power can go out. And if everything is done digitally, then
mm,
suddenly, maybe during the voting time, your power goes out. How do you vote, right?
right.
So small stuff like that. But I think we have a good enough, we have a really good, we don't have a good enough. I think we have a really good like digital basis, and now we have to kind of reinforce it and keep it going and yeah, make sure all the bases are covered.
Mm. I mean, I think a lot of these next developments are actually very much reliant upon our generation, right? These are things that
Yeah.
your generation, our generation in Estonia is going to have to be thinking about that. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's all achieved because, like I said earlier, Estonia is ranked top in Europe in terms of the best public education system. Now, obviously, when websites put these types of statements out, I do kind of question the legitimacy of these statements. So I do
Hmm.
want to ask maybe if you can share some of your personal experiences, whether this is really valid or why you think it's kind of got that conception that Estonia has this really good education system. Or yeah, just kind of based on your personal experiences, I think that'll be good.
Yeah. Education is, I mean, as a child, I was always like, oh, education system could be better. But I've come to realize that it is really good. And especially the fact that our top schools in Estonia are all public. Like there's barely any private schools.
Mm,
Sometimes you have to pay some amount to have a slot in some public school, but it's comparatively little. So there's no uh, strong economic
hmm
issue in terms of access to education.
mm,
But it also very much depends on where you live. If you live in a rural community, your funding might be smaller, or just there might be less access to either extracurriculars or qualified teachers. And teacher salaries are also well, there was a even teachers almost went on a strike a
mm,
couple months ago because the salaries have not increased enough to keep up with like living wages really.
mm,
Um, and that, discourages new teachers from coming. But all in all, I think our education system, especially given the fact that most of it is public, is really good. Um, but there is one more thing is where, I mean, the top schools are very stressful and they're mostly in Tallinn, they're in the city. There's a difference between Estonian and Russian schools. They've kind of tried to combine it. I haven't kept up with it as much, but usually Russian schools are less funded. There's lower scores, um, and yeah, just in general, there's less there. But they've tried to change that, and there's a bunch of new schools that they're building, which are really promising actually, and both they look really good and they're paying the teachers better. So hoping that that continues. One last thing is IT education because they keep saying that we have like great IT education. I
mhm.
haven't really received much IT education personally. I've
Mm,
learned computers and stuff by myself. We did have like I think one computer class or two, but yeah, the IT education, they say programs to, you know, bring more IT knowledge, but like in certain schools, in certain programs, not everywhere. So yeah.
mm. Yeah, because I was going to ask, like, with this great digital system, I was wondering if that's kind of embedded in the education system, but yeah, to see you clarify that off is nice. So,
Yeah.
yeah. let's move on to our second topic. So we've kind of talked about a lot of these positive developments in education and technology, but obviously no country is perfect. Every country has, flaws, and not necessarily even flaws. It's more about things that we can hope to change for a better, society. There's always things that we can improve on. And I think for Estonia, what you've mentioned is that it's stuck in regressive beliefs. So it looked at some polls, and it shows that just 15% of Estonians believe it should be possible for individuals to change genders. And then from the youth population, which is probably the more concerning one, boys aged 13 to 15, 25% believe that women should stay out of politics. I found that quite upsetting, to be honest, as a statistic. Could you
Yeah.
please contextualize these conservative mindsets, especially from the youth, the ones who should be more progressive? And what are the key causes of gender-based discrimination, would you say?
Yeah, I saw that study. That was in the science section of the public broadcast
Hmm.
paper. And that was done by the Ministry of Education, which was surprising and concerning. It was kind of like I haven't really heard any students talk about it. For me, it was a big surprise. Um, Not really a surprise in terms of like this is happening because I feel we've globally seen a trend towards like more I don't know how to say this um kind of a male reaction movement which is very strong and
Mm,
to an extent anti-female. I think that's partially bleeding into Estonia, but that's not 100% of the cause. I think we're a small country, and because we're a collectivist, we tend to regulate each other on social norms and how to behave, not necessarily by always saying stuff, but sometimes just by looking at you weird, being like, "Oh,
right.
you do this? Hmm." Um, and I mean, that's probably partially because we had to build Estonia up as an identity, because Estonians were, I mean, before we were a country, we were just like the land people, just the people who like the Swedish paid to like till the till the land and be in the bog. Like we weren't really a people until we started, developing an Estonian national identity. Um, but with that, I think came more rigid kind of gender roles.
Mm,
It's interesting because at least in my family, and I felt more in general, uh, in Estonia, women are more actually have a fairly strong position.
hmm.
Also, partially because, again, like going through the Soviet Union, like everyone had to like work, everyone had to like be strong.
Yeah.
Um, and especially my grandma, who was, taken to Siberia at a young age and then came back, and all of that really hardens people. Um, so I think women have a strong role in Estonian society,
Mm,
but they're still, stuck behind that traditional family. Oh,
mm,
you have to be a mother. Politics is too hard.
mm,
Maybe that's also how we see politics.
hmm.
It's we think of politics as, arguing and being strong when it could also be, sitting down and talking. But yeah, I was also surprised by these numbers. But they make sense. With young people, I don't know. I don't know if that's going to change. I mean, hopefully, as also slightly older people get into media positions, because I've noticed in media,
I
there's
agree.
very much this, men are men and women are women
Mm,
stereotype, even in Estonia, because we only have a couple media outlets, and most of them are reinforcing this idea. Also, the stories and the movies we have. There's currently this show about like middle-aged men doing like middle-aged man things, and I'm like, I mean, yeah, sure, but um, but yeah,
mm,
and I think it's also seen as not really an issue. Again, like when I mentioned these numbers, some people were like, oh, that must have been like plucked out of somewhere. Like that's not relevant. Or they're too young to understand or stuff like that. So I think it is an issue, but it's not really taken as seriously. Maybe it will solve itself. I don't know. The same study actually, women ranked like pretty high in like most things. Like in terms of what they brought as a reference, in terms of like social progression, they ranked as high as like Sweden and Norway.
Yeah.
But yeah, the male population ranked lower for whatever reason again. So yeah.
Can't help but wonder whether social media is playing into this for that kind of age demographic. I
Yeah.
worry a lot about the influence of social media because I personally I don't use it as much as, for example, my younger sister who's in this age band, and sometimes I look at the content and it's all fitting into this echo chamber. And I thought that echo chamber would be one of progression, but actually I'm seeing a lot more content that really counteracts that, and that's something that worries me, especially with the
Yeah.
media. Now
Yeah,
move
me
on
too.
to LGBTQ rights in Estonia as well. So on
Hmm.
January 1st this year, so in 2024, it was actually enforced or introduced. Estonia became the 36th state in the world where same-sex couples could marry. And this obviously is a very important development and a positive one. So, what do you think has been the general response to this new law from the people itself? And have you seen any resistance to this type of law?
I was very surprised because I thought it was going to take more years to actually get this enacted, like same-sex marriage. Before we had same-sex partnership, but that doesn't provide, all the same legal benefits. So I was surprised, but I was like pleasantly surprised. Like, hey, we've done it, we've made it. Um, there was, I'd say, a mixed reaction.
Right.
um, because there's a growing kind of conservative wave in Estonia,
Mm,
and some people from that wave, especially when they were in positions to publish articles, they were like, "This is a ideology war. Why does
mm,
Estonia need this?" But most people were actually like didn't really mind it. I heard some mumbles about, oh, they could have kept the partnership. Why do they need marriage? But
mm,
most people went on with their lives, and the same month, the first couple got married. Actually, um, there were headlines about it in some magazines, and the Estonian public broadcast also called it like a historic landmark, which I think it is. So I think when people or when Estonians look at like the success of like I don't know Sweden, Norway, they look at more of oh, they have great welfare, they have great technology, they have great finance. They don't really look at, oh, they have like same-sex marriage and stuff.
mm, mm.
So I think when it came, it was most people were like, "Ah, fine, I guess we have it too now. It doesn't really bother me."
Right.
Yeah.
So another big issue in Estonia is alcoholism. And Estonia has the third highest alcohol attributable mortality rate in Europe. Unsurprisingly, the first and second place are the two other Baltic states, so it's Latvia and Lithuania.
Yeah.
I don't know what that says about that specific Baltic region, but is there a reason why alcohol is such a big issue in Estonia and maybe even in the Baltic region? That's something that's interesting and
Hmm.
something I've been curious about. And what is being done legally or socially by NGOs or even the government to try and mitigate or stop this issue?
That I've talked about that to my mum,
Hmm.
and it was hard to come to like a an answer because I think Estonians are first very deflective. They're like, "Oh, it's not a problem, or it's a problem elsewhere more." I was also by reading this number that third highest in Europe, I was surprised as well because I know it's somewhat bad, but I didn't know it's that bad. And I mean, it also does depend on the region. I think one of the key things why it is such an issue is that it's kind of come with, culture and growing up both, how do I put this? I mean, there's movies of like Estonian like land workers, feudal people. I don't know how to call them.
Right.
Anyways, them just like drinking, going to the bar every night or going to the tavern. And then Soviet Union, you get this culture of drinking vodka, and Estonia also produced vodka in quite a few places. So alcohol, for one reason or another, has become kind of a part of Estonian culture. Like if you have a wedding, you'll probably have alcohol there.
Mm.
Even if you graduate school, you'll probably have alcohol there. I was surprised by the fact that after we finished ninth grade, which we were still like underage, that was one of the first things we did was plan a party to drink. I was like, what? Um, and then in UWC, it was such a change because no one pressures you to drink alcohol.
That's right.
And then back home, it was like, oh, you're not drinking the strong stuff. You're not drinking vodka. I'm like, I don't need to be drinking vodka. Um, and after finishing high school as well, that was one of the first things they planned was a big kind of party with drinks in it. So I think it's become a cultural norm. There's social pressure to do it even at a young age, and then it's like, they're gonna drink anyways. It's fine. Let's just, make the best of it. I think mitigation wise, well, we've done some things like you can't buy alcohol at night, you can't buy alcohol in the morning,
Mhm.
and there's an alcohol tax which they enforced 10-ish years ago. So there are some things, but then people go to Latvia or Lithuania and get cheaper alcohol there.
Mhm.
This is a whole thing. Like there's alcohol stores on the border, so Estonians can go buy cheap alcohol from there. So it's become a part of the culture, and I don't know how to change it
Mhm.
because it is so integral. And all the young people, even from like the top schools, that's like one of the things they do. They just, drinking is just normal. And yeah.
Interesting to hear that kind of take on the issue. And yeah, I mean, I know that alcohol is it's become such a big part of culture. It's associated with culture, I mean, and identity. And yeah, I guess that's not something that's particularly harmful unless we see kind of the consequences of it. But yeah, so the final kind of aspect of regressive beliefs I want to talk about is Estonian nationalism. And obviously, nationalism as itself is not something that's bad. I think that we're all nationalists to an extent and patriotic to an extent, but I think it can become quite harmful, or in Estonia's case, the kind of treatment of minorities that comes with it. Um, where do you think nationalism really derives from in Estonia, and where do you think it can be quite harmful, or has been proven to be harmful in some cases?
Yeah. Nationalism, I mean, the reason we have nationalism in Estonia as such a strong force is because we kind of had to create a national identity, as I said before, and we kind of really had to enforce it. We had to be like, we're Estonian, we fight for our freedom, because we were occupied by all these different, um, not stakeholders, but all these different actors,
Mm,
mostly the Soviet Union and the Russian Tsardom. So we kind of had to be Estonian. We enough that, for being Estonian, you could be imprisoned,
mm,
because at times you could even for having an Estonian flag, you could be imprisoned. So we had to like people like buried their Estonian flags and snuck them in and sung in secret. So it was kind of a necessary force
right.
for independence.
Mm,
But now it's to the point where well, not now it's to the point, but some people or some groups then take it further and are like, no, we just want Estonia for Estonians, whatever that means. That
right.
usually means you have to be white. That usually means you have to be, of uh also to an extent a certain, I mean, name, because some people have like German or Swedish names, last names,
Mm,
and you're often seen as less Estonian. Names don't matter as much as appearance because Estonia is very homogenous, you stick out a lot, you know. So we have these two things. We have Estonia is homogenous anyways because it's like this strange small country that on the side that not really a lot of people around the world are going to visit. And then, you know, national identity of what does it mean to be Estonian? Oh, you're this or that. So then if you know you come to travel or you even come to live, as some of my friends have in Estonia, and you look different, people are gonna point that out or gonna be like not gonna know how to act with you. Um, and beyond that, if you live here, you're constantly gonna be somewhat of a stranger, or people are gonna perceive you as a stranger. Um, I mean, I think we just have to accept it more. There are now more multicultural families living in Estonia, which I think has kind of improved the situation because also the media in most cases portrays it better, not always, but like, oh, look at this. This is a black family living in Estonia. Um, but yeah, we just kind of have to accept that there are different people and understand that Estonia shouldn't just be for, you know, a certain type of person. Like you could be black and you could be an Estonian. Like, yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing. Are there any last words you'd like to say about any of the topics we discussed today, or any other topic you might want to bring up that we didn't include? Or are there any ways we as the youth can make an impact or difference, would you say?
I think you covered a good kind of basis about Estonia. I mean, besides all of this digital stuff and social stuff, it's also we just have, you know, really pretty nature. We have bogs, we have I think a very interesting, you know, cultural tradition and a great language and songs. And there's so much about Estonia that I can often, you know, forget how much we do have, but I think it's a worthwhile place to visit and also a worthwhile place to look at. Well, either for, you know, our culture or just Estonia and nature in general.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's toppling sustainable tourism. So if you want to have a nice, clean, journey holiday, might as well go to Estonia. I definitely want to go visit there at some point. It's quite far away from where I am, but yeah, definitely would be worth a visit. Well, thank you once again, Marcus, for joining in this episode and representing Estonia. This wraps up this episode of the Youth Factor. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you look forward to the next stop of our journey. Thank you very much.